Hey, thanks for tuning into the Zelos Podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder, and this week, with the pros behind the pros, we're going to Major League Soccer. And the San Jose Earthquakes, a buddy of mine, Mat Herold, he is the sports scientist for the Quakes, and we're going to get underway with the conversation in just a moment, but let's hear from the sponsors first. This episode of the Zelos Podcast is sponsored by Kinetic IQ, where intelligence meets motion. Kinetic IQ brings a biomechanics lab into the palm of your hand, letting you measure movement anytime, anywhere, with just an iPad or an iPhone, and no wearables required. I've been using Kinetic IQ's markerless motion capture in my own practice, and whether you're screening athletes, analyzing posture and gait mechanics, optimizing performance, or guiding return to play, it helps practitioners like us save time, capture more objective data, and make instant actionable decisions. So to learn more about how Kinetic IQ is shaping the future of intelligent movement, visit them at kinetikiq.com. That's KINETIKIQ.com. You know, I can't tell you how thrilled I am to have Metabolic Elite be one of the sponsors of the Zelos Podcast. You know what makes Metabolic Elite different is their commitment to real results. I've seen a lot of supplements and performance enhancement things over the years, but they pair clinical experience with innovation, like Lipitab, their proprietary solid-state liposomal delivery system. It's a chewable format which enhances absorption like nutrients like BPC 157 and synapses. They're delivered more efficiently in the body, supporting recovery, focus, cognitive health. Their formulas go beyond the basics, solving performance health challenges at the system level. Every product is tested for quality, it's backed by research, and trusted by athletes and clinicians alike. So learn more at metabolicelite.co. Remember, you can check out my website, rockysnyder.com, for continuing education workshops, in person, online. Also events that are coming up this November. I'll be at the Arizona State Clinic at the NSCA. Hopefully you're already signed up there and we can meet in person. But we've got a whole bunch of things, podcast archives, blogs, and a whole bunch more, including a copy of my book, Return to Center, Strength Training to Realign the Body, Recover from Pain, and Achieve Optimum Performance. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Rocky_Snyder. Click the subscribe button and enjoy the conversation. Well, Mat, thanks for coming on the podcast. For the listening audience, I've known Mat for a little while now, the better part of the summer, actually, because every now and then we catch some waves together over here in Santa Cruz. He makes a journey from PayPal Stadium over to Santa Cruz, and we've been grabbing some waves. So it's nice to get you on the podcast, and I won't say off the waves, but, in a different environment. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks for being persistent and having me. I've been a little shy, kind of like going after the size of waves that you catch out there. So,
Oh, you're too kind. Yeah, they just look bigger because of my size. That's really what it is.
I know that's not true, been out there, but yeah.
But talk to me about you're lead sports scientist for the San Jose Earthquakes MLS team, and I would love to know just how you got there, like your career path, and honestly, like where did you get the inspiration to start pursuing sports science?
Sure. Well, there's only one sports scientist, so I can't say I'm the lead, but it's sort of an MLS mandated role. So now every MLS club has a sports scientist, or maybe they're slowing down the process of hiring, but it is a role that every club in the MLS has to have. And, most of that includes data management and interpretation of the data. I'm out there with the iPad, looking at it, making sure, we're hitting certain daily targets that fall into the week and prepare us for the match coming up. You can get as big picture as you want, but could be also return to play type of things as well. And then, we review after training. Did we hit the targets during training? Maybe there's more that needs to happen after, that we call top-ups. So as far as the question, how did I get into this? Well, reflecting on my career, I've coached at literally every level of soccer now in the United States, from grassroots to junior varsity high school, varsity high school, junior college, NCAA Division two. So, skipping NAIA and Division one. Although I've done like strength and conditioning work at UCLA as an intern a while back with the soccer team there. Um, and then like PDL, I've worked with that level, and then USL Championship, and now MLS. So
Wow.
it's just been a lot of comparing and learning, seeing what really separates those that continue to move up the ladder from those that don't. And that's been pretty interesting to see. And for me, I never really had the goal of I need to work at pro soccer. I think it was always something that interested me, but at the time I was living in LA, coaching high school, club, and junior college, loving life, everything I did was soccer, and there was always this calling to travel, see the world. And I saw on Twitter, or what's now X, a posting for a PhD embedded with the German national team. And I was like, yeah, what the heck?
Really?
I wasn't super excited about doing a PhD, um, but I thought might as well see what it involves. So got up at 5 a.m. and turned on the Zoom like we are here, and it was two of the match analysts that had recently won the 2014 World Cup and a host of other people, all working with the DFB, the German FA. And the questions were really exciting, like tactical situations in a match. And I left the call like, wow, that was so exciting, just to pick the brain or have them pick my brain in this passionate, enthusiastic way. I mean, I don't know how much you know about Germans and football, but uh,
It's it's pretty harsh. It's pretty
yeah,
it's pretty like deep and strict. Bundesliga,
yeah,
I followed it for a little while and I'm like, these guys are serious.
yeah. I think, but it's also fun. Like they're serious, but it's serious fun. Because they do truly love the game in ways that, and we could talk about it, that I don't see the same love for the game in America yet. Um, but that's
I'm
a
so yeah, talk about that.
oh. Um, well, there, I think, well, one thing is the realism that a lot of the kids have. For example, I train with the sixth division team, and athletically, you'll find better athletes probably in Division One college soccer here in America, but technically, tactically, they're at least, if not far superior to what you'll find at the Division One college soccer level. And you talk to these guys like, man, did you ever try to make it? And they're like, oh no, no chance. I'm just happy playing with my local town or village team, as they call it. So, um,
No.
yeah, so there's that respect for the game. It's a profession there. There's a lot of humility that you see. I mean, I'm sure there's egos, and I've seen firsthand some parents from the sidelines, but I don't think you get the same quantity or amount of like horror stories here of, even myself, I would have fathers of the kids on my team like, hey, let me buy you a coffee or take you out to lunch. And it was always like some way to get onto the topic of getting their kid more playing time. So those are just some
Sure.
examples. And not American soccer's beautiful thing. It's this eclectic mix of cultures from all around the world, and I think it's still finding its place. But it's nice. It was nice to be part of like a German football culture and see what that's about.
And how long did you stay over there? Did you achieve your PhD while you were there?
Um, After I did get the PhD, but it took me a couple years of, still writing, finishing up studies. But I was there in Germany 3 years.
3 years. Wow. And all over Germany or in one specific region?
Mostly in Saarbrücken, it's called, which their club there is FC Saarbrücken, and well, I would say one of the most popular American players ever, Eric Ronaldo. He was a striker for them when they were in the Bundesliga. Now they're in the third Bundesliga and climbing their way back up. A great club, a lot of tradition. But I also spent a bit of time in Holland because one of my supervisors was there, so I spent some time there as well. Also a strong football tradition, but yeah.
So, how does the experience you gained in European communities, how did it carry over into the States? Like, what did you bring back from that experience?
Sure. I'd say in practice, well, let me think about this for a second. My study topic was the implementation of data science in football with more of a tactical approach. Not so much on the physical side of the game, like looking at GPS metrics and all that, but more um, kind of subjectively defining what is a change of direction, what is a sprint, and how do players on an individual level create space for themselves, either behind the opponent or in front of the opponent to receive the ball and exploit space behind the opponent's defense. So that was sort of like the crux of my PhD. Um,
Wow.
but most of my colleagues were studying more physical data, physiology, hamstring injuries, things like that. So I was in that world. And then I needed a job when my scholarship ended, and I got hired at the DC United second team to be a coach, assistant coach, and performance coach. And up until that point, I never even wore or used GPS in my whole career. So I had to learn quick, and that learning has never stopped about the role of GPS. What are these metrics we're looking at? What do they mean from a workload standpoint? And what do they mean from a tactical standpoint? And that's kind of where things are heading now is, what is high speed running? Not just like, is the player tired? Did it contribute to the game? But also, yeah, did it contribute technically and tactically?
Okay, this is just kind of surprised me. I won't say blown me away, but it's definitely not what I was anticipating because you're using sports science tactically, which I hadn't actually thought of.
Yeah.
In my myopic view of sports science, I was thinking about recovery, top speeds, and so on. But you make space, make space, make space. That is the one coaching kind of mantra for soccer coaches. You just hear it over and over. And I spent a number of years with youth soccer and
Okay.
soccer coaching my kids teams and then as they aged up we did a little bit more there, but make space was like always being drilled into them. So okay, Matt, how did you use sports science to determine how athletes make space?
So yeah, great question. I just want to say, like, the game is about making space. Like, Pep Guardiola is like, take the ball, pass the ball. We don't pass the ball to move the ball. We pass the ball to move the opponent to create space. And
Exactly.
also defensively, a lot of the workload is to condense space or prevent the opposition. I don't know if you're familiar with Marcelo Bielsa. He's coached all over the place in the Premier League. I think he did really well with the Chilean national team. I'm not sure if he's coached the Argentinian national team, but he is an Argentine. But he recently gave an interview saying like when his team does well, they exceed their match averages for running metrics, which the research actually doesn't always support that. But I agree with his general sentiment, which is, effort and enthusiasm for the game, commitment to close a guy down, that some of that stuff you can't even measure with GPS yet. And yeah, I think like Argentina's success recently, when you watch them in the World Cup, they were so relentless and combative and feisty, running hard. I mean, so I think the philosophy of a guy like Bielsa and like where GPS is headed and how to use it is, it's in its beginning stages, I think.
Okay, so I think I'm getting an idea because like when you're on offense, you want to spread out. You want to spread the field and make space. And when your opponent has the ball, you want to try and condense their space as much as possible and really kind of border them in. So therefore, you're using GPS and you're noting when your team is on offense with the players, what direction they're heading versus when the other team has the ball. Is that how you're determining space, whether it's constricting or increasing?
So in my role, we are not at that level. We're not doing that. But in a lot of
Okay.
soccer research, that is definitely happening with like brilliant data scientists that are creating all these algorithms that look at shapes and I should remember the name, reciprocity of movement. Um, I forgot exact terminology for it because I've stepped away from my PhD now for a bit, but yeah, they're looking at the synchronicity of movements between opponents, between teammates, at a really fine grained level. Um, for me, it's more like, okay, what was our high intensity running and our fullbacks in possession and out of possession? What was the score line? How did that influence our movement in the first half and the second half? And you over a season and games and just reading and talking to other practitioners, you start to see some patterns. Like, for example, if an opponent sits way back and defends in a block close to their goal, they call it a low block, and maybe that's all they want to do, or maybe they're down and they do that and try to counter, um, or that's just their strategy. They're not leaving a lot of space to run in behind. So you may see less sprint distance and high speed running. And just to define that, high speed running is like anything over 5.5 meters per second, and sprint distance is generally anything over 7 meters per second.
Okay. And so you're tabulating the frequency of that?
Usually we get an output of the total meters of running at those thresholds.
Got it. Okay, so in regards to like murmuration, that's kind of like in nature when you see this flock of swallows in the air, and it looks like it's one organism as it flows across the sky and quickly changes direction, and you realize it's not one bird that's controlling it; it's their feeling of air pressure around them that controls it almost as one entire organism. And sardines, anchovies, bait fish and bait balls, they have that same kind of, I don't think they call it a murmuration when it comes to fish, but as you're talking, I am experiencing the same kind of vision when it comes to players on the pitch. And
Yeah,
so some people are utilizing sports science to look at this murmuration, this
right.
well, kind of an, I won't call amoeba soccer because that's more like 5 and 6 year olds and that just clog around the ball. But there's a dance. There's like this certain amount of almost instinctual information that the players get, and you guys are, some people are measuring that out.
Yeah. Um, my guess is clubs like Barcelona, where a lot of these top data scientists are integrated, or Liverpool, they're using it to identify patterns. Hey, how does the opponent we're playing next, where do they concede goals from? I mean, I'm sure our Quakes team is doing that as well, because we do have data scientists on the tactical side, but that's where there's room to grow, is integrating the data
Mm.
and the physical side, or the technical tactical stuff with the physical performance. And to me, that's kind of what I learned in my PhD, and it's a must. But what the data science is doing is identifying those patterns, how teams give up and concede chances, goals. How does our team create chances? What are patterns where we're successful? Where do we break down? And they can, yeah, use that optical tracking data to determine that.
Now, of course, you can't put GPS on opposing teams. They've got their own team, of course, that tracks that. But how do you, if you do, for instance, how do you utilize sports science with the opposing teams? Do you use? Oh, is it only during a match that you can kind of get an understanding of it, or do you look at game films? I mean, maybe that's beyond your position with the Quakes, but I'm just so enthralled by the information that
Sure.
people are able to harvest.
Sure. So now there's something called Skills Corner, where a little too late and for my liking, like on a Tuesday, we'll get the data if our match was Saturday. Sometimes I have to follow up and it's Wednesday, but we see the GPS data from all the clubs, that every club in the MLS. So
No
we
way,
can
all
compare.
teams share that information.
Yeah. And there
Well,
was a
that's
company
interesting.
called Second Spectrum where all the data was available from optical tracking data. That's not even using GPS. And I'm pretty sure that is where Skills Corner is getting their data from as well. We're not sending our GPS data. The league has it tracking them. So we can really look like, all right, against Austin, which wingbacks or fullbacks did more sprints in possession of the ball, out of possession, and really tell a story about the match.
No way. I had no idea that it was so homogenous, like it was shared across the entire league.
Yeah.
Di- I don't know if other, I don't think there's any other major league sport that does that. Do you?
I think Second Spectrum was involved in the NHL, but I'm not really sure.
Wow. Okay. There's things you know, and there's things you don't know, and all that, that quadrant there. What are the things you know that you don't know when it relies when it comes to the your role as the sports scientist? Like, what are the things that, if you don't mind sharing, as long as it's not proprietary or taking, advantage of this conversation, but like, what are the things that intrigue you that you would like to learn more about?
Yeah, I mean, there's also a lot of things I don't know that I don't know, and
Right.
I guess I won't be able to talk about that. But yeah, I mean, I know it's that cliche, the more you learn, the less you feel you know, and it just seems like every year I'm involved in pro sports and meeting more people, seeing on LinkedIn all these brilliant people coming out with articles and taking things to the next level and the next level. Um, it's the list is pretty much endless. I mean, even just my day to day, like, okay, what's the most efficient way to hand out GPS given my
Hmm.
facilities and to collect them from the players? Because, even something as simple as like going around and finding their GPS devices on the ground in the locker room, they get lost in the laundry. Like, what's the, like, those are little practical things that save you hours over the course of a season. Um, and with every like, oh, well, if I hand them out on the field, then, there's these pros and cons versus having them on a table. So even just like I said, stuff like that is, I think it just takes trial and error and years of experience doing the thing. Um, More specifically, I'm obsessed with just movement and developing athleticism. And so, I'd love to get a 1080 sprint in and look at all the metrics from there. Um, I think we're learning more and more about what makes an athlete fast. And in soccer, how important is pure speed? I think Usain Bolt proved that pure speed alone can only go so far because his career didn't pan out despite him being the fastest man of all time. So, blending the tactical, technical, physical, and psychological is just that's what fascinates me the most. And the nutrition side, we just hired a dietitian, and it's not like, once you have a role in the club, it's kind of like, all right, stay in your lane a bit, even though we do have a lot of meetings and it's really open and everyone is there to learn from each other. But, stuff like gut health and, like, I talk to my dad and he plays softball and I'll say, "How was your game?" I didn't have today. Or some days he does. Why? Why is that? Is it, why are we thinking the thoughts we're thinking when we step on the field? Was it sleep? What we ate? Was it what we ate that affected our sleep? Was it maybe we didn't lift the morning of and that could have primed our nervous system? So, it's endless the way I see it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you bring in the psychological aspect of it too, because that's typically more subjective. I mean, there is objectivity to it. It's not like if we look at it from like maybe a biological model or other models of psychology, but most of the time it's subjective. So here you are being a number cruncher for the most part, very objective and analytical, and now you're bringing in this kind of nebulous form that's attached to performance. So how do you how do you mesh them together? Like, how do you take the information that you attain from that and apply it to performance?
Yeah, good merge of the random topics I brought up. But for example, let's say a guy didn't sprint a lot. And we say, well, the opponent wasn't sitting back. Usually this player sprints X amount, and today was only this amount, which was far less. Well, were they fatigued? Let's look at all the training of this week. Maybe we pushed a little too hard the 3 days up or didn't taper enough. Or maybe we didn't push enough on the Wednesday when we're trying to get more sprint distance and high speed running. Or, going back to what I said, was it food? Was it a fight with their wife at home? So I think all this stuff comes down to still human interaction, conversations with the player, trust, and building relationships. I don't think right now, there's no metric that can make up for two brains forming trust and having a conversation. So
Well said. Well said. This is the perfect time. We're talking all about sports science with Mat Herold of the San Jose Earthquakes. We're going to take a quick little break because the two sponsors we have, Metabolic Elite and Kinetic IQ, are all about sports science, including gut health. So we'll be right back. Listen to the sponsors, and we'll talk to you in a minute. The Zelos Podcast is sponsored by Kinetic IQ, where intelligence meets motion. Kinetic IQ brings a biomechanics lab into the palm of your hand, letting you measure movement anytime, anywhere with just an iPad or iPhone. No wearables required. I've been using Kinetic IQ in my own practice, and whether you're screening athletes, optimizing performance, or guiding return to play, it helps practitioners like us save time, capture more objective data, and make instant actionable decisions. So to learn more about how Kinetic IQ is shaping the future of intelligent movement, visit kinetikiq.com. That's KINETIKIQ.com. At the forefront of Metabolic Elite is Jim Lavelle, internationally recognized clinical pharmacist, a chief science officer at Lifetime, and the co-chair for the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. He's got over 4 decades of experience and has guided Olympic athletes, professional teams, and leading health institutions. What makes Metabolic Elite different is their commitment to real results. Like Lipitab, their proprietary solid-state liposomal delivery system. It's a chewable format which enhances absorption like nutrients like BPC 157 and synapses. They're delivered more efficiently in the body, supporting recovery, focus, cognitive health. Their formulas go beyond the basics, solving performance health challenges at the system level. Every product is tested for quality, it's backed by research, and trusted by athletes and clinicians alike. Matt, I'm curious. We're talking about GPS, and there's several ways in which you can record in terms of wearable tech. We've got chips that can be just tied around the laces of their cleats. They can be embedded into the insole, or then you've got your vest. So when it comes to GPS, like what device are you using?
our club uses Stat Sports, which the players wear a vest, and it's weighs next to nothing. And if you look at the average posture of a player in the MLS, it's like, why are they slightly hunchback? Well, it's not that. It's the device. And it shows more on some players than others, but yeah, that's how we do it. In other clubs, I've used Catapult, and I think the one you're mentioning around the foot, that's Player Maker, which also offers technical data. And I know they're pushing and trying to grow. We'll see what happens with that. A lot of it's going to come down to player preference and like, it's going to interfere with my touch or, things like that. Even myself, the few times I put on the vest, I'm surprised players don't complain more than they do, just because you want to be or at least I want to be as light and unrestricted as I can, and anything extra's extra. So, and in fact, along those lines, I heard Brazil didn't wear vests and GPS in the last World Cup, but
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Anything that's going to alter sports posture or restrict movement, you got to kind of have a little question mark going. Okay, one, this is going to skew the actual results if they weren't wearing it. Like, how do we get that that pure unadulterated information? Is this as close as we can get? But do you notice, I mean, aside from maybe chatter in the locker room, have you ever
Mhm.
taken, well, you can't really notice this, I guess. I was going to say, have you taken guys without the vest and those with the vest and compared them? But it would be kind of hard if you didn't have any kind of device, obviously, on those that weren't wearing vests. Or is that the only wearable tech you have?
Yeah, that's it. Or
Mm.
sometimes we would put heart rate monitors on guys on like a match day -4, which is typically when a lot of teams will do small-sided games. And that's when you want to see those intervals of like, let's say 4 by 2 minute games, you want to see a spike in heart rate, which, a lot of times you would think, oh, heart rate would be higher on bigger spaces. They're covering more ground. But in fact, it's that constant mechanical load of stop and go that jacks the heart rate up. But going back to your point about, comfort and freedom, I think, we always want to blame, like me in surfing. If I'm having a crappy day out there, it's got to be the board or the waves. But,
It
I got,
is, man. It is. Just in case you are a hell of a surfer, so it's usually the equipment.
right. But, it's not the board or the shoes. It's not got to be the shoes. It's us and some little lightweight bra. Women have to wear sports bras, so you don't hear the complaints. But I just think as an athlete, it takes some getting used to. That's all.
I imagine. Okay. How do you just mentioned load, and like I go to load management and trying to dial in just the right level of load for players to try to get them to peak performance. And it's kind of like a recipe that's always changing. You never know, from one individual to the next, from one team to the next. But how do you how do you attempt to
Mhm.
determine proper load management?
Yeah, that's a fun topic is what's the ideal microcycle? Meaning, how do you set up a week leading into a game? Whether
Yeah.
it's, if it's a game Wednesday, you're spending a lot of time recovering, and training is basically, they call it regen or some technical stuff. If it's a Saturday to Saturday, that's the fun talk about microcycles. And what most clubs seem to do, which, I've tried to push back just for my own desire to be different, maybe, and just really understand it. Like logically, it does seem to make the most sense. Where, let's say you play Saturday, there's actually research showing if you come in and do regen Sunday, take Monday off, that reduces your chance of injuries. I think it's like 30%. That's
Nice.
a study by Martin Buchheit. I don't know if I pronounced his last name correctly. Versus reversing those 2 days post match. So most teams in MLS take off the day after the match, and then sometimes they'll come in, do a regen, and then a 4 day build. And on that regen day, whether it's Sunday or Monday, that's when the guys who didn't play much, they'll get their extra work in. Um, so yeah,
Wow. To me, that makes so much more sense to do regen after a match and then give them a rest day, only because you're going to get more proprioceptive stimulation for areas that may be under uh, under assessed in terms of injury or potential wear factors. Uh, I don't know. For me, it just makes more sense to try and restore the body as soon as you can after intense work, and then just let the nervous system figure out what to do with that maybe the next day. So
right.
compared to trying to rest, where things are just going to stiffen up mm, and then try, yeah. Anyway, that's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
quite cool.
You raised some great points there.
So, man, that's really cool. Okay, so load management. What about in times of regen or maybe post rehab return to play or return to performance? There's got to be uh, parameters placed on the athletes that you don't want them exceeding, and of course we typically are linear in our approach to many things, but in this case I could see it being more undulating. Like, what does that look like from your perspective when dealing with either regeneration days or return RTP players? Like, how do you monitor, where are the restrictions or parameters that you place on them?
Sure. That's when the live tracking really comes in handy. Because as an athlete, you like they'll set targets like, okay, like you said, or in fact, I find maybe I'm wrong, but like you want to be a little more linear overall. Like let's say this week they ran 60% of their typical healthy week. Then the next week, 70%, just say taking total distance. Then the next one, 80%. But day to day, definitely undulating for sure.
Right.
So they'll usually set targets, and each day will have a different theme. So it could be like an intensity day where, whatever mechanism they got hurt, that's where we're inching in intensity. So maybe it's 70% of change of direction at, and then it's hard to quantify with the GPS. There are bands for D cells and X cells that could be used, and we do use them for return to play. But yeah, let's say it's like, all right, let's start with 10 XLs at this band and no more. So that's when you got to have the iPad out there because you might think you hit 10, but the threshold was too low, or maybe this athlete's just so athletic that they can just jog, cut, and they hit the threshold. So it just helps to quantify and make sure you're really following the vital steps or the key steps in the return to play process.
Okay. Talk to me about like orange or red flags in regards to the probability of injury to players. Like, if you could, like prediction models is really what I'm getting at. Like, do you have prediction models in place when looking at this information?
No. And I heard that there are people doing that, like a guy at the US national team who has that model. And that's something that we're interested in doing. Um,
Where would you
so
start? Where,
yeah.
like, if you had the whiteboard up in front of us right now, like, where would your brain go when trying to create a injury prediction model?
It reminds me of the acute to chronic workload ratio. And we use an exponentially weighted one just because we feel like it's more relevant. And so I don't know how
Dude, you
much you
just
know
lost
about
me.
that.
I lift heavy weights for a living. You lost me on that. What do you
Oh,
mean?
so there's this guy named Tim Gabbett, and he came out with this model called the acute to chronic workload ratio, which acute would be typically a 7 day cycle of training load, and chronic would be 30 days or 28 days. So you we're basically saying we don't want to go too high in this 7 day stretch, or even one day of the 7 days, compared to what we hit in a 30-day stretch. And so day to day, you're getting values usually like they say zero point 0.8 to 1.2 is the healthy range. 1.2 being like, ooh, we're pushing it. Above 1.2, now we're spiking the load, and that's a risk. But there's some other brilliant minds that don't really believe in that. Like, for example, Franco Pellizzeri, he's this Italian guy, really charismatic, has worked in the Olympic Games, and he's pretty outspoken that he doesn't feel like that model is super helpful. But I think it's a good framework just to say, all right, are we spiking the loads a lot or not? It doesn't mean it, yes or no, it's going to predict injury. And predicting injury is something that I don't feel you could do. Going back to kind of what we talked about earlier, there's the food, the sleep, the marriage, interpersonal stuff at home, you know, numerous factors that may play a role in whether someone gets hurt or not, hydration status. So just looking simply at training load and volume, I think we do it and it's worth doing, but it only scratches the surface.
Is this potentially where AI might contribute, like play a
Sure.
role where you put in the subjectives, the things that are going on in the players' lives, and you combine it with these, and then maybe that provided there's a proper algorithm, they just say, okay, here's what the AI model is suggesting.
Definitely. Like right now we use for wellness, the players will score, oh, my stress is a 8 out of 10, like really stressed, or 2, I feel great, sleep quality, same, muscle soreness, all that. But, and I think the data shows that that's in pretty good sync with, like internal data, like what you get out of a Whoop or an Aura Ring, which I don't have a lot of experience using myself. And that's where we're headed, is using more of that for our wellness metrics, so it's more objective and not subjective. And so
It's almost
perhaps,
like you. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was going to say maybe with those metrics, like their heart rate variability combined with the amount of sprint distance they've gotten this week, the fact that it's spiked, some model can predict an injury, but I'm
And
not sure.
probably spit out like an honesty quotient also in that regard. And I don't mean
Yeah,
that, the players are going to tell you what it is they think you want to hear sometimes. They are maybe going to hold back if they think their play time is going to be restricted. And then you've got people that are just open books. No matter what's
right,
going on, they're going to let you know. So there's that element that is a variability when you're talking about the subjective questionnaires. So it would be interesting to see if you could develop, like, honestly, like an honesty quotient from one player to the next, so you can dial in when they give you this feedback in your questionnaire, what's most likely going to be more accurate. Like, here's what the value that they're giving you, but here's the honesty quotient adjusted value. It's either lower
right.
or higher. You're probably thinking these things already in your head. I
No,
mean, it's
yeah.
like,
I mean,
you know,
even when we collect RPE, rate of perceived exertion after training,
yeah,
I think that's why it's so important. The players need education. They need to be educated and informed of the process. Why are we doing this? What is it for? How could it backfire on my career, my playing time, and how will it help me? How does this information get to the coach, and what is he going to do with that information? And to be honest, in a large staff, it's not always the smoothest sailing when it comes to player to coach communication through medical and performance staff. And um, yeah, some players, hey, what do we even do with this? Nobody even uses this. You'll hear, no, we actually do. And that's when, opportunities come to educate. But I think proactive education is even more important. Most soccer players, I've worked with hockey, wrestling, American football. They'll hit the gym hard. Soccer players were the worst. I was the
right.
worst in college. I thought it was all plyometrics and that's all I needed. Weights make me heavy and slow. I didn't understand nervous system, recruiting, fast switch motor units, application of force, none of that. So the typical soccer player, I think, needs some educating. Like, hey, I know you're moving slow and it's heavy and it might even feel uncomfortable. We're not going to put it on your spine, but even on a single leg, here's how it's going to help you change directions better, etc. I just think those, these are smart guys that make it at the professional level. They're not just good players, they're gifted humans and they want the information. So that's my little speech on that.
No, that's good. And so is this where velocity-based training comes into play for you? Like when you're got them in the weight room and then this adds to the buy-in?
Starting to, we're our second team performance coach has devices and he started using them. So I'm like, give me some. And with some of the athletes I work with in the gym, I've experimented with it and intent goes through the roof. They compete. They want to see the number. And that is what transfers to the field, not slow bodybuilding reps. That's great for other things, but if we're talking about projecting our mass on in different vectors on the pitch, then the intent has to be there.
And so you brought up the medical department too. Provided that the athletes are doing like a blood panel, like testing all their numbers, many different kind of markers come up. Do they Are you able to integrate that into what you're doing, or do you find that being a separate silo entirely, or is there some kind of integration amongst the sports science and medical in that regard?
There's a tremendous amount of integration. I don't think we're taking their blood metrics their measures, and that's informing our like training decisions on a day-to-day or week-to-week. But it may with the nutritionist or the dietitian and kind of more on the medical side at that level. But medical and performance are very integrated, and we meet daily and weekly on return to play, especially on how can we help these guys, how can we communicate to the coaches, individual needs of certain athletes, and yeah, it's pretty collaborative.
Okay. Granted, MLS is the baby in the world when it comes to soccer leagues. I mean, the Europeans have us dialed. But I guess what I'm wondering, because sports science is I in regards to like wearable tech, computer models, that type of level of sports science, it seems like it's a fairly even playing field where no matter how long the clubs have been in existence, when
Mhm.
you talk about sports science, you guys are pretty much exploring the same virgin territory. It would I be correct in saying that, or do you feel like the Europeans or elsewhere have more of an advantage?
I think you're correct. I mean, there's great practitioners in Major League Soccer, and I think if we're talking about the game itself, Europe is at a higher level with, probably the coaching as well as certainly the players. But as far as sports science, I think that's where the playing field is level. I mean, and each country is going to have different, I guess, primary things they look at. Like, I think in Italy, I may be wrong, but they're more like looking at physiology of running and things like that. Whereas maybe in the Premier League, it's a little more holistic with they're in the gym looking at counter movement jump and improving speed and power. And you may see that in the leagues. Um, or that could just be England has a lot of money and they buy the best players right now. So hard to really say.
Okay, so we got World Cup coming up.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're stoked on that, especially it being here on the West Coast. Well, it's being everywhere, but we got some matches coming up. Any particular countries that like? Let's get your picks on World Cup right now, where we stand.
Yeah, it's funny. I have family from Brazil, so they would come over and, give me Corinthians jerseys, talk about Pele. So, and I've been there to train, and I was always Brazil, 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 but they've been kind of in shambles for a while, despite producing so many great players. But it's hard for me not to hope they do well. I always hope America does well, because it's good for the game, good for the country. But I'll get a lot of shit for this, but I don't want them to do too well because I like an underdog, but not when it comes to the purity and beauty of the game. Going back to what I said, I don't think America deserves to win the World Cup yet. And if they did, it would be kind of like a cheap feeling, like we're not there yet. That's how I feel about it. But I think I want
What
them to.
about the dark horse, the underdog? Which one is the one you've got your sights set on?
I don't know. I don't.
Netherlands?
Yeah,
No.
my head's been so much in like, I used to be a big fan, and now I'm more like I want to watch a good game, and I like the
Hmm,
competition more than wanting some team to win. So that's kind of how I
very
am as
cool.
a sports fan now.
Well, you're in the off season right now, or postseason, we'll say. What's your role now? Like you've got the academy, of course. You've got you're obviously you still got full time employment here when the off season comes around. But what does that look like for your specific role?
Yeah. So first is a time of reflection, reviewing how the season went, where it could have gone a lot better. We present on those things relative to our role amongst the staff. And so I'll be doing some PowerPoints coming up and working on that. And that's kind of like the main thing. But there are players that come in that one training, especially the guys that were hurt and missed some of the season. They stick around longer to kind of give themselves more of a running start into the next season before they go home or go away. also supporting them remotely with strength training templates, fitness, things like that. We give them the best support that we can, but of course, we don't know what they're going to do. They may jump in and play small-sided on some days, as they should, and play basketball with their buddies, cross-train, things like that. So still providing them with the programs, especially the stuff in the gym. I think that's kind of like, hey, at least do this, because that's going to really give you robustness and a profile for when you come back. And then it's a little bit of time off, maybe a surf trip, and then we're back at it for preseason. So
Preseason begins February?
January 11th.
January 11th. Man, all right. So you got some time to, like you say, reflect, maybe get over here and catch some waves with me. That'd be great. Matt, this has been really insightful. I love delving into areas that I am not familiar with. And when it comes to your role, you really taught me a lot. So I can't thank you enough for coming on. This has been great. If people want to follow you, maybe LinkedIn, do you do Instagram? What are ways people can get a little bit more insight?
Yeah, I do have an Instagram where I try to provide value based in science and not just feelings, geared towards soccer players of all ages that want to stay healthy and improve their athleticism, and just appreciate some philosophy around the game, including loving the game. So if they want to follow me there, it's Hero Performance _. So
Excellent. All
thanks
right,
for
we'll
the
make sure
time.
that's in the description. You got it, man. All right. So next time we see each other, we're going to have a board meeting.
That's right.
Well, that's a wrap for this episode of the Zelos Podcast. I want to thank Matt and the Earthquakes organization for allowing this conversation to take place. And one more little kind of note from our sponsors. Before that, have yourself a great week, and we'll see you next time. Remember to check out metabolicelite.co. Check out all the products they have on their website. Synapsin Pro is something I've been using to help stay focused without having to over-caffeinate myself. It keeps me in the zone so I can just really hone in on the things I need to achieve without feeling like, man, I gotta reach for an energy drink every 5 minutes. Metabolicelite.co. And don't forget, Kinetic IQ. They've got markerless motion capture for morons like me. I can use their product with my iPhone or my iPad. I can look at posture analysis, movement analysis of any exercise, gait analysis. It gives me everything I could possibly want when tracking people's movements. So, check out kinetikiq.com.